So you gotta get going. Did everyone have a chance to look at the minutes?
They waited too late to get their heads.
Here we go.
We have four?
No, we did, we 11, and now we're one over, so we're good.
I'll make my name here real big so I can
Thank you, Ed.
Second.
Thank you very much, Dina. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we'll just jump right into it. The next item on our agenda is to discuss the previously approved recommendation regarding the extension of the sales tax. We had that extending the current tax and going but no shorter than 5 years, no more than 10 years is what we had previously agreed upon. So any thoughts after our last meeting?
I'd like to say something, if I may. I think that we should really take a bold stand here and recommend to the council that we extend the tax for 15 years at a 1% tax instead of half-cent tax. And then, after further consideration of this group, make an all-encompassing list with a oversight committee to apportion the money and oversee its construction and building of all the items on the list that have been talked about in this meeting.
Right. Well, the oversight committee is a given. They're going to do that.
It already exists.
It already exists, actually. Two of the members are on this committee. So, I don't know about going to a penny. I can support the 15-year, but I'm real concerned about raising that.
It's awful strong.
It's a bold move. However, we are provided cover by the other cities that have already lifted their rates. So now we're actually a very low rate.
But to fail entirely would be really bad.
Correct, that's right.
Because you'd be looking at probably 3 to 5 years before you could bring it back.
Don't you think the residents of Edmond would support a bold measure similar to the MAPS program to keep Edmond competitive?
I do, but it's just based on personal opinion, not fact. Back when we did the original CIP, the original Public Safety Center, and I don't mean to get Pete's blood pressure up, but the original one failed.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now,
It was brought back
I
very
want to ask a
quickly.
question though. How many of you know why it failed?
Because Pete Reeser opposed it.
No.
It was location. People did not like the location.
And they
because it was
didn't
gonna
like the
be-
tax mechanism either.
Property tax.
Property taxes, everyone here in Edmond owns property.
Yes.
If they didn't learn something from that, property tax for 15 years to pay for that, as opposed to.
Well, I think you're absolutely right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? I think the location was part of it,
Yeah,
and the
location.
biggest
It was
handful
the property
was the
tax.
property
As long
tax.
as we stay away from property tax, I think everyone's
We did a
gonna
lot
be
of
okay.
surveys after that, okay? And I think you guys could probably get copies of those.
Do you remember what the findings were?
Well, it was kind of ranked in an order of why it failed. It was the property tax. It was more the cost of what was proposed. The cost of what, because it was it's a higher cost than what went through as a sales tax. The location wasn't, contrary to popular belief, and wasn't as defined, okay, because they were talking about putting it over there on Kelly. But the real deal was that it was the impression it was using parkland,
Yes.
right? So that was the location issue. So if you looked at the second ballot said that it was going to be built on land already owned by, non-park land already owned by the city. So that was the thing that kind of pulled it out of the muck and the mire. And then the sales tax was the one that put it over, and then Pete supported it, of course, that did too. But I don't think, Edmond citizens are very well educated.
Yes.
They're smart. They know how things affect them. They know what they want. I think if you try to raise it to a cent, I think that's going to send up a lot of red flags. I think a lot of people are going to look at that and not.
Just
What's
informally,
being discussed right now, just to get everyone up to speed, is a 1%, extending of it, raising to 1% for 15 years.
Right, that's the
So
discussion.
how much would that bring in? If we went to 15 years,
If it's-
what does a half do and what does a full percent do?
0.5% brings us 8 million a year.
So 15 years.
1% would be 16.
1% would be
Plus the
16.
existing three-quarters.
Yep.
Well, we don't get, yes, you're right, but we don't get to determine that.
Well, it's,
I think if the group decides to recommend it, I think that's good, but I don't think the
I
council's.
think you have to look at it in total.
You may not have heard what I said. I mean, if the group agrees as a body, to recommend a penny over 15 years, I mean, that's fine. But I don't think the council is going to support that. I really don't. I think they're going to drop that down. Yes?
But let's give,
Given the introductory remark that the reason for working towards being done in November was to coincide with a tax election,
Yes.
so that the city didn't bear the cost of an odd year collection. Well, those are for 10 years, so to me, the more logical is to stick with the 10-year cycles and save the city from doing separate tax proposals out to the voters. And they've renewed the 1% for operation of the city, from what I gather, for how many years? The operation of the
That's
city?
permanent.
No, the extension of the 1 penny,
Yeah,
it's changing every 10 years.
yeah, but when did it start?
77, I believe.
Back when
So-
we were here.
They've already gone along with that, so I think the concept was there was hope that it might coincide with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was kind of offered out to us as a
Cody,
logical
are you going to
amount.
say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, if I can. I think when this task force first started, I actually agreed. I was a little more optimistic about increasing the rate, just as an idea. But just the last few weeks, we've seen gas is under $2 a gallon for the past month.
That's got a lot to do with it.
which means consumers have more money in their pocket to spend.
It does, but unfortunately here in Oklahoma, we also, if it's a long,
It's going to affect everybody.
and then also in that time, Oklahoma County has proposed, I guess informally, not officially yet, but the 1 cent tax for the new jail. So even though I understand it's really not moving forward, maybe quite like they thought it would, but it's still a possibility. And it's put the idea of a sales tax increase out there in the public and people's minds. And I don't know if it's been too well received, even for something that everyone probably thinks that we need, a new county jail. So I don't know, I really want to be cautious about doing that.
Well,
Especially if we're moving into, I don't want to say the R word, because hopefully it's not that, recession, but any kind of downturn with the energy industry is definitely going to affect the metro area probably quicker than it will other areas, and more so. And even if we were to put something on the ballot or recommend putting something on the ballot that would raise the rate, of course, it puts the city in a tricky situation if they were to need to go raise the rate, raise revenue, any reason just to cover operations or something. That's really a worst case scenario. And I promise I'm not a pessimist, more of a realist, but
yeah.
just, I don't know, to me, extending the rate or extending the time rather than raising the rate would seem to be in keeping with the idea of we just want to keep things, progressing as they are. We want to keep improving Edmond, not necessarily jumping into something like a rate increase. In my mind, it just feels like it would be an easier sell for the voters and for the council. I know we're not going to be the ones that determine what goes to the ballot, but I would hate for our list of projects, our priorities to be predicated on a rate increase that the council's going to say, no, we're not going to do that anyway, and throw it all out altogether. So
Well,
that's my opinion on the matter.
I'm glad you brought that up. Something to keep in mind, the deal with the county, that's in the back of everybody's mind. I could see going further out with it than raising it, in my opinion.
Well, but if the county tax is raised, that's going to raise all the communities in the county, so it
Correct.
won't raise Edmonds independently.
Right, but People don't look at it that way.
Our rate is still lower, but they do. Most people in Edmond are spending their money outside of Edmond right now, and they're doing that for a number of reasons. But if we raise the tax, they will have nowhere to go to get cheaper tax rates.
If we take it to the 15, are we locked into that for 15 years?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We took
It's decreed by the
had this one for 5.
If you did a permanent, it'd be
It's 5 years.
permanent. You know, but I don't think you want to do, I don't want to think you would, I don't know.
I mean,
It's possible.
this is just me, and again, it's my opinion. I mean, I would rather pay a cent for 5 years versus half a cent for signing up for 15 more years, even with the realization that after that 5 years, it's probably going to get renewed. But 15 years, to me, sounds like, yeah, I mean,
It is.
that's just too long. And 10's maybe okay, but man, 15 to me is too long.
People are facing a lot right now with looking at, you're right, they have more money to spend today, but do they have a job next week? Or do they have cuts? I mean, some of us are old enough to have seen 3 or 4 of these cycles, and it's not any fun.
No, it's not.
And it's here, we haven't felt it like we're gonna
And
feel
even
it.
if you're not in the petroleum industry, it affects retail, it affects
All of it.
banking.
It does, and I think there's two different discussions, whether the economy can kind of bear it, what's the public sentiment and how is it shifting? And then I think that's also different from what, are we wanting to take some kind of bold, visionary type of leadership in investing in the capital infrastructure of Edmond? And do those, if you do that, does it help offset any hurt from the energy decline that would hopefully rebound over the course of that time, whether it's 5, 10, or 15 years? And does it bring additional sales revenue to Edmond to help the city and everybody else be able to go through in our word?
The number one thing we can do in a recession is to spend money through that recession, especially the municipality should spend money to jumpstart the economy. We shouldn't be cutting spending during a recession. That's just going to exacerbate the problem.
I agree with that.
Thank you, Mr. Kane.
I'm a Keynesian.
I want to be careful that Edmond is
Remember
being
that.
conservative and being passed by. I see Oklahoma City's done a lot. Norman's talking about doing a major thing. Moore has a program to bring in businesses that they immediately put money in. Yukon, it just purchased land from Oklahoma City that they are going to build a huge parks complex. And most of these are things that they think are going to attract people to come into town. And I see us not doing that. I see us not really being bold, and we're just being safe. And I think we need to really think forward on what would attract people to come into town. And
It concerned me when we had Janet here and she talked about it. It's the schools, and that's basically it. Well, when you go through Oklahoma City and you see the charter school activity and the community lifting up different parts of the school system, and it's improving there. Norman's always been a competitor on the school system, and others like the investments that UConn has made. We don't want that to be our only feather in our cap. And
that sports facility that UConn is building, I have kids in Kansas City, and Overland Park has amazing sports facilities, and people come from Oklahoma, Texas, all over for that facility. So I want us to be careful, but I want us to think what would get people to come into town.
Well, I think it depends on, and I hear what you're saying, but if we want to increase the amount or go out a longer term, we've got to really hit some hot buttons.
I agree with that 100%.
You've got to really
You've got
get some hot
to get some
buttons.
excitement.
Right.
It's got to be bold. I mean, it can't be, we're fixing all the streets. That's
I'm
just not
agreeing
gonna do it.
completely. That's what I'm saying.
If we're jumping it up, then it's got to excite people. People have got to see it
But that's
different.
got to be in there.
Yes.
It has to be in there.
But people
Meat and
really-
potatoes
Yes.
have to be there.
Well, I think we said we wouldn't maybe say this, this, and this, but we'd have a list of everything and let the council, there are the tennis courts, there's golf, there's the
Yeah.
performing arts. All those are things that would get people coming in. And then do roads and give fire, the library, that would attract people,
Yes.
Several of those are projects that are partnerships, so they involve schools, as you mentioned, they involve other areas. I'm kind of leaning on the be bold side of the issue too. I like Sam's point though about, I might look at Penny for 5 years and feel okay, and even if it's renewed, but going out 15 years, that's getting a kid through school, if I'm thinking school-minded.
Well, our last, oil recession was one of the worst ones. I'm thinking about the one in '82. And
When?
so.
82?
Yeah, that was about 10 years. So if we, in a worst case scenario, if we voted ourselves a 1% increase for 10 years, we would have built during a time when, we would have been in recession. Maybe the income wouldn't have been as great because sales taxes wouldn't have been as great, but we would have been building infrastructure in time for the next prosperity time.
So you're saying there was a 10-year long recession, basically,
Right.
it took us 10 years to get out of it.
And this one, I used to be in the oil business full-time, and it's, it was very sobering. And this one looks just as sobering in terms of the market forces and what's going on in the world. So I'm not an optimist about oil. I'm an optimist about Edmond. And I think if we build during tough times, we do better. My biggest worry about the whole thing is nobody votes for a tax if they don't trust the government. So and this is a bad time to be trusting government in the United States. I think in Edmond we do really well, but we have to maintain that fidelity in the way that we propose it, in the way that we plan to implement it, so that people think, okay, well, this is a really good bet for my tax dollars. We can't just say we need a cent for 10 or 15 years and we're going to do really great stuff. We have to say we're going to fix these roads, we're going to build this facility, and this is, I think it's going to have to be a very detailed proposal if we do get ambitious.
And a good market.
I agree. I think it has to be kind of MAPS type of situation, or how, Norman, if you take that bold of a move, you have to have a plan in place.
And be very
People
accountable.
can have a vision, sharing the vision of how they're going to be investing in Edmond. If the beginning of this, if someone was said, I might be open to a 1% 15-year sales tax increase, I would have thought that they were crazy, but it's more the inspiration and the vision that I think can potentially get you there.
And they're going to think we're crazy, because when we walk out of this room and hand them our paper and say something like that, they're going to think we're crazy.
But they're going to be thinking we're crazy smart or crazy ambitious, because when just talking anecdotally to some Edmond residents, when I explained to them what we were discussing, they said, if you give us a MAP-style program, we're going to be all for it.
Yes.
We're going to think this is awesome. We're going to
But
be
it's going to have to
excited.
contain things that they want.
It has to be things they want, and they want the things we've all been talking about, though.
We'll make a
Every
difference.
age group, and we have to get children, we have to get middle-aged, we have to get senior citizens, something that is for them. And we had Mitch, but we want to be sure that we don't just say we're doing kids or something.
Yes. It needs to be a community investment that we see. Like I mentioned the performing arts, which I've regretted ever since with Mitzi about not being a huge arts fan, but I see the value of performing arts in our communities.
Right.
Well, it was the number 2 deal on our list last week.
Yeah.
Last meeting. It was the number 2.
And it was on
item.
my list too. so.
And the tennis is 2 for 1, or the tennis, the
Yeah.
schools are going to take it over.
Right.
It's kind of a good
Yeah,
buy.
And that's sort of a no-brainer
Right.
from my
The money
point.
that would bring in.
That was the fourth item on the list, was the
Yes.
tennis center.
Mm-hmm.
That was the
With
number 4
public
item.
schools.
And the
Yeah.
fidelity is there in that we've seen the success of the swim center. And even though we aren't all competitive swimmers, we see the benefit that brings to our city.
And both the tennis and the performing arts, the city's not going to take on running them. Both of those have partners that say, once it's built, we'll take it on and run it. So that kind of isn't a continuing.
Expense,
Yeah.
yes, which I was.
Somebody tell me again what the cost of the Performing Arts Center would be.
It's all over the place.
Did we hear 3 acres that we need downtown that we don't have, and
I had
hear
to talk
$100
with
million, is that?
I had to talk with somebody else about it, and they were telling me that what they're being shown is anywhere from 8 to 12 acres. Okay.
I was thinking 3.
Well, this is from a very good source, anywhere from 8 to 12 acres
For what?
for a performing arts center. because that includes parking and everything else.
No.
I'm just telling you, Pete, and I sat there kind of agog at the deal too. and I'm-
Well, this is our credibility speaking. We've got to know what we're proposing when we propose it.
Well, back to
Otherwise,
what you said about credibility and trust, I mean, the track record that the city of Edmond has with the previous taxes
Right.
is excellent.
Yeah, the police center's coming in great. You know,
Right.
Like it?
You haven't gone back and said.
The 2000 CIP, even one of its biggest opponents that I talked to, and I know the guy very well, Pete knows him too, said the only thing that's not complete is Covell Parkway and something to do with downtown. He didn't elaborate too much about it, but he said the good part about it is it's all in the pipeline. It's all in the process of being planned and being thought out. So you can't say that it was ignored. Go ahead.
I have a question about the Performing Arts Center. I don't know how you accomplish what that looks like and how much land you need without having some money, because the city can't have or I think they can't have an architect plan it, and the university can't without going out for bids and everything. And right now, all we've seen is what the university dreams of. That is up here, but what's built may be way back here that works for both entities. Well, how do we get something that we can have it drawn and narrow in to say, okay, you need 3 acres and we can afford, again, we can dream of an 80,000 square foot building, but maybe we can only afford a 40,000 square foot building. I built the boathouse. I had $6.7 million, and I told the builder, that's all I have. There's no more money, so you have to build with that. Can't we do, but I don't know how you get it all in the right order.
They told us they could do a feasibility study in 3 months. I don't believe it.
I don't either.
But
Well, it's definitely,
none of the facts, as you said, you're not going to have any of the facts until a study is done that puts concrete space and size and potentials together. But that doesn't preclude us, in my mind, from being on our list.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because all the council really asked us for was a list and funding options. The funding options is, they mentioned it being threefold: city, college, and some quote foundation or contributions. I know.
I just want to raise my hand.
I know.
We have Ann that's going to take care of all of it.
Yeah.
We start with $5 million.
I'm going to go to Citizens, see if you'd like to name it. It's
The Citizens Performing Arts Center says Jill is
Citizens
so in here.
Performing the
Yes, Sam.
you would really redeem yourself.
I agree with Bob. I mean, it's kind of like the city of Oklahoma City has done with the convention center. I mean, that's their intent. They're obviously working towards that, but if it ends up not happening under this MAPS projects, they have other projects to spend it on. So I agree with Bob that we don't have to have a specific plan for it, but, it does need to be our intent, and we need to go after it, or we being the city, as aggressively as we can. And, if it gets passed, do that study. And, this would be a great location for it here, and in combination maybe with some other community stuff. But
I think how you word something like that is, you want it for specific, infrastructure, cultural improvements such as, or possibly to include, and you put it in there like that. That's how you word something.
I think we just be real explicit about it. We say, we're going to build these following 5 projects, and we just, start at the top, Performing Arts Center, and we go down that list of the top 4 that we identified in this group, and maybe we have an additional list that also says, to possibly include, and we list those other 30 items that we came up with. We basically have a list of 37 items that Mark kind of tallied up. That was all of the things that we said in here.
Well, and I think the Norman plan had kind of their top things and then a percentage of it that would go to Parks and Rec or roads. David, I think you had your hand up, right? That was
No, I
coding,
didn't.
sorry.
And this, speaking to the list of, is it 37 items on there? And maybe this might be discussion or next time we can all think about, is there anything on the list of what's been presented that our group can maybe agree that we don't want to consider in our recommendation?
Well,
That's a tough one.
David put together a list of kind of the
Maybe some
top
of them I'll
items.
pass them this way.
I like the question, because I think one of the things that's been bothering me, and Sam kind of mentioned it a minute ago, was some of these things feel like infrastructure, like there shouldn't have to be a special tax for the roads, for
You want me to explain this real quick while it's going around?
That'd be
Okay.
great.
What I did was I took the minutes that were put together, that's the first page, and it's based on what everybody said. Your name is on there, what you said. I did lump some of them together. Like if somebody said fix potholes and expand streets, it's up to transportation plan, road improvements, it's all there together. Parks, there were some where the sports complexes, parks, that I put together. Walkability and trails I put together. There was a deal about connectivity and some of the streets that are blocked off. I remembered somebody bringing that up, and that's part of the transportation plan, is to get rid of part of that, so that was counted as part of that. And so this is what was from the minutes, and on the second page is just the tick marks that I made. The list I was making as everybody was talking and doing tick marks, and if you look at it, it pretty much matches what the minutes said. And in order, I didn't actually go through and rank the one on the back, but the one on the front is actually ranked in order of each of the, and what's funny is, out of all the members that were here, there were 74 items mentioned, 74 total items mentioned. And some people mentioned some things twice in different ways. So that's why so you'll see like on Jill, there's 3 different deals on, because she said it's 3 different things about roads, transportation deals. So they were all lumped into one. You got 3 votes on for roads.
I didn't know we could vote multiple times.
If you look at the minutes for Jill, it actually said.
Oh goodness, I need to be more careful with my words.
Yeah.
Are you sure it wasn't this Jill?
I'm not picking on her. She said traffic improvements, railroad crossings, and Broadway improvement.
Oh, well, railroads are different than roads.
Well, that's part of the transportation plan.
And Broadway for me is the aesthetics of Broadway, so.
That would be like the streetscape.
Well, some of these things that were mentioned as separate things that had to do with road improvements and traffic improvements are all in the transportation plan if you look at it. So
I guess we could just take the top one off then.
I don't think you're going to get a tax through without talking about roads.
They want
roads.
roads.
That's not going to
They do
happen.
want it.
Roads and traffic, that's not going to happen.
as indicated by
But the number 2 item was performing arts center.
Can I, on that, I've been kicking around, do you think we get any pushback on, there's the Armstrong Center, are we gonna get any pushback of duplication, or we've got that, should we spend our money somewhere where we don't have anything at all?
Well, that's a private religious organization.
Right, but their events are open to the public. And I've never
and
been.
it's far away.
It's kind of removed from what people consider Edmond.
And I think that the
I don't see
intent,
us Edmond getting any benefit from that.
Yeah, it's
in
too
my
far
mind.
away.
and I think the intention of this is less about the actual performances and having a place where you can go for your child's recital and teaching opportunities and university partnership that may have a little bit more limitation, but it probably wouldn't benefit the Armstrong to have something like this.
We could help that by adding downtown to the front of it,
Yes, I think that.
because it doesn't matter where it is.
I think, for me, that.
Especially when you're talking about
matters.
acres.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, if you put it next to Armstrong, they might be upset that we are building next to them. But if we put it here, they'd be happy with
If
it.
the library and the Performing Arts Center aren't in downtown, then I start thinking more about downtown. So I see that as a way to have some public investment that should spur private investment.
Well, there was
It's a catalyst.
There was some separate conversation regarding the downtown master plan and downtown parking. So I didn't lump those together because there was some separate conversation on that,
Right.
completely separate conversation. And there was some, there was a talk about dedicating more money to fire and dedicating more money to police, and there was some conversation about fire stations. Well, if we dedicate more money to them, they're going to have the money for the fire station, so I kind of lumped that together as well. So it's just something to think about. I was really shocked at the number of items that were listed off.
Yeah, I missed the last meeting, so one of the things I did though was go back to our early list, our initial list from the city, and there were like 5 or 6 separate fire-related items.
Right.
So it's really hard to, sometimes some of these got really lumped and there's a whole bunch in there, and other times it's a single item.
But I mean, and after looking through some of this, there's a couple of items that are on here that are really not under our control. There's really not much we can do other than say we want them.
There is overall, though, consistency, I think, in quality of life.
Absolutely.
In that that a lot of these items that got a lot of tick marks, even though I may have heavily weighted some, they are talking about quality of life type of issues, and also they're all partnership oriented, where maybe not some ongoing expense to the city because someone else is operating it, and it's some type of catalyst for other people to start surrounding it and investing in our city.
Well, if you wanted to cross out the word plan and just use transportation or road improvements, I mean, you could do it that way too, and it's still the same basic thing. I was really, really surprised at, the number of items that everybody brought up. I mean, I was like, wow, we've got some people that really want to do some stuff in here. And I
think it speaks to somewhat Ann's saying, I mean, we've done a good job maintaining our city, but we haven't had some gigantic leap forward. Mitch is a great example, and the Public Safety Center, but there's more that we can do in so many different areas.
Well, we've had the money to get it to a certain point. And I think what we need to look at now is the money we need to go to the next point.
Yes.
Well, that goes,
You missed a point.
That's rare.
Sales tax for the jail, was that 1 cent? I mean, is what they had proposed for how many years?
Originally?
Talking about the county jail?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
1 cent.
One cent for how long?
Yeah,
Steve?
how long
It
was that?
was so long, and then it reverted to a half-cent for operation.
Okay, you're talking about the one in place now.
So they
We'll
have,
let the feds build it, and they'll build it and
was it 10 years?
amortize this over 3 years, I think. 28% increase in,
It'll cost twice as much.
28% increase in their property taxes if the feds build it for us. Yeah.
When you run a crap.
Because they do a 3-year amortization. Even though they never pay their debts back, we have to do it in 3 years.
They're mad. Like it or not, there's going to be a jail.
That's going to happen. The jail's going to take place
Yeah, it's
because it
gonna
has
happen.
to.
It has to.
Or it's either going to go on our property tax or it's going to go on sales tax, whatever. But the feds are going to make them make better incarceration quarters. There's no doubt about that.
And
The Performing Arts Center has to be fairly close to the university, I would think, or the university doesn't want to, because, and they don't have the land up there at the university to put a Performing Arts Center on, is what they told me when I went to a couple meetings. And so that's going to have to be in the proximity of close to the university and be downtown if it's going to be a co-op deal with university and city.
I went back and looked at some maps. I mean, I'm taking a lot of homes.
a lot of lost student housing too.
But David.
Well, either student housing or single-family homes north of where we're sitting right now.
That's all that's there.
Because it's not going to sit on here.
Or a church.
It's not going to sit on our church. It's not going to, you got one in mind?
No.
It's not, I don't think it'll sit here.
Well, I think if you take the parking, the parking's the issue. The parking's the
That's the point I'm
acreage.
trying to make. Yeah.
I mean, if you do and I don't know how big this building is, but up 3 floors, I think if you do the performing arts, you almost have to do the garage downtown.
Absolutely.
And that's on a separate site in the area.
Right.
But, and I haven't looked into it that deep, but I would think this site would work for a 40,000, wasn't it 40,000 that they said? Square foot?
That's the footprint, because then they can take it up higher and get the.
Right, if you don't have to deal with parking, if the parking's a parking garage, whether it's across the street or.
You could use
So you can even-
40,000 square foot.
one of the
on this
things that-
footprint.
And there's a lot of downtown people. I went to the city council meeting, and with the ability to, for the new developers to pay a fee in lieu of parking, there's a lot of downtown property owners that are worried about where my people are going to park. So I think that garage is a great idea, and I think the performing arts being downtown, that garage makes a lot of sense.
One of the other options with the performing arts is splitting the building itself too, that, you know, the classroom section can be a skywalk across an alley, or, you know, so it doesn't all, there's lots of
Yeah, we're on a third floor.
case study, you know, type things that they can go
And what
through.
gets,
so.
and what gets me on board with it is the ability to get the parking for downtown with something that complements daytime parkers or more of a nighttime demand. And then if you can also have the library as part of that, then you're immediately just blowing up downtown as a venue for people to open cool restaurants and things to do. And
So, this brings up kind of one of my pet projects, which is if we're going to propose this sweeping reimagination of downtown Edmond, one of the first things on our list has to be a really serious plan for how we're going to do that. That'll entail both engineering and architectural plans, as well as we need to poll all the churches and say, you want to stay or go long-term? And that could be a, 1 or 2 year decision on their part. But, there are big, both of us have looked at the ownership, and actually we all have because we got it. The churches own big swaths of downtown Edmond. And a lot of times churches want to get bigger and they can't stay on their footprint. And then also we could propose a joint project with the churches. I don't know how this works legally, but we could build garages on their land that they could use for church things as well as for other things. Because there's a whole lot of church property nearby.
there's a lot of property here. I mean, the surface lots that are just across the street from here, we own
Right.
half of those, and the city does as well. And that could be a better utilization of that, which was part of the downtown study. So I think that there's even the density, even though there's density in downtown Edmond, there's availability to be able to do something special, and it creates more of an urban feel for the downtown that I think helps bridge with the university to do some special things that hopefully then create some even development between the two.
Right. And if we did propose a 1% tax or, something very bullish, then there would be a lot of impetus behind whatever the city said. We'd say, we have this money, we're going to make a move, what do you guys want to do? Not to run anybody off, but it allows the city and all the private owners to sort of make the plans they need to. So I think a plan for downtown Edmond, if we're going to get this ambitious, is going to be really important. And frankly, it's going to take a lot of nuance to get that done.
You probably remember this, at the Downtown Urban Board, Mr. Commons was at that meeting one night, and we was talking about the parking garage, and he indicated at that point in time that the city had money, we could do the architectural rendition of what a parking garage would be, because, so when this passed in a year, we'd be ready to go to build a parking garage, or not the former Harris Center, but the parking garage. And I think the same thing could happen with the university for the Performing Arts Center. There's probably some funds there that we could get some sort of an architectural rendition of it. We've got 3 good locations downtown that could happen. Performing Arts Center and the parking garage, I mean,
Yes.
whichever way you went. But if you go out to try to find 10 or 12 acres someplace, it's going to be too far from the university, and they're not going to want to participate.
Well, my big concern in a footprint like that is if we want to keep it in an area that's close to downtown and close to the university, we're going to have to take out single-family homes. That's
Say
going
that
to cost a
again?
lot of money. We want to put it in a place that's close to, if it's that large, we're going to put it in a place that's close to downtown, close to the university, we're going to have to take out single-family homes. That's a whole different ballgame.
We don't necessarily have to do that. The footprint Joe was talking about would be the 38,000 square foot footprint for the parking garage. And then this place where we're sitting right now and the offices to the east would be 2 potential additional sites for the Performing
What
Arts.
would you do with the city offices?
You would demolish them and build a beautiful city tower to be a new city hall.
We do have a lot of service.
As they laugh.
City offices down here.
Once you get a parking lot, I mean, the service parking availability, when you start driving around downtown Edmond, there's a lot of service parking availability.
Larry come tell us that there's all kinds of parking already here, but people won't walk 2 blocks.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you go
That's
outside,
absurd.
check out how many open parking spots.
Well, somebody was saying parking within 5 miles, thinking, who was that?
Jill, what about working backwards? What about going through these projects and kind of assigning what we think would be amounts we would want to do, and then totaling that and deciding how much money? I mean, rather than us trying to go and say, okay, a penny for 15 years, why don't we look at what we are talking about, and then how do we get to that figure and see if that's something we're happy with?
Keep in mind, this doesn't include any of the staff recommendations, really.
What's that?
One of my concerns, yeah.
Well, the transportation
This
and
really
the
doesn't include a lot of the staff recommendations.
Well, I think
police, fire, you've got them on here.
Right?
Fire, police,
Pretty
public
much. I think
transportation.
they were all on the list, but there are many that were on that list that aren't here.
And we talked, I mean, we did mimic what they were doing in Norman, which I, don't Norman my Edmond. They had the 20%, the bumper stickers.
It's the other way around.
Yeah, I know, that's why, that's why.
I just switched it for
We
us.
should have, I like the better one. So the,
Told the guy one time, you could have it, so
but they did like the bucket, basically like 20% will be towards this, and so that could then give some, the city the autonomy to be able to utilize those funds to meet those needs.
That's a good idea. But I don't know how many people know this, when they originally talked about building a public safety center on this site, they talked about a parking garage across the street. Do you remember those conversations?
Did you know that the Public Safety Center site used to actually be a parking garage?
I remember.
Say what?
The Public Safety Center site used to have a parking garage on it.
The building that was there was the parking
Right.
garage, they tore it down.
Well, they retrofitted it into an office building, and then they tore it down.
Right.
So we want to white out Wantland, so we got,
Yeah, well-
I know, I got to put it going,
I worked in
so.
that building 37 years ago. There's parking underneath the office building.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
40 State.
Concrete block building, it was a concrete block building, and then parking was underneath, and the offices were up.
Listen to him, he agreed
Okay,
at the
so it's
end.
elevated office. It wasn't technically a structured parking.
Could we take Ann's thought and maybe flesh out or put a little more specificity on some of these projects, ideally with the dollar amount, and then kind of go through this reiteration, revoting?
Yes.
For instance, the projects that are the performing arts somewhere, and I didn't hear this in the presentation, but the presentation had it as a partnership between the city and UCO, but somewhere I also noted an Edmond Public School.
Well, we kind of threw that out here, whether there would be an interest.
Tennis center,
With the schools.
The city and the
That's the
schools.
schools.
Yeah, so.
Yep. And on the library expansion, everybody needs to understand, on that, you just got to supply the building. That's what you do.
It's that county deal too, isn't
Right, it's county, and you just supply the building. After that, you're done with it.
it? Who owns the land?
The city.
City owns
The
the
city
land.
does. Yeah, I mean, I love the thought of building a new library, as part of kind of this whole infrastructure here and creating some community rooms and small business kind of spots and where
Well, I
classes.
was originally hung up on the second one until you brought up expanding that one, so I could go either way.
I'll
on
give
that.
you a ride to it.
You don't need to give me a
Well,
ride.
I don't know that there's enough room for the library and performing arts on the land available or kind of downtown, so.
So we'd have to figure it out.
For the library.
Yeah, and well, you might be able to combine the parking garage and the library, if you could make it a little bit more kind of vertical.
If it's more than a block, people aren't going to walk.
Yeah.
But what the library really wanted was out in the Mitch area, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
They requested.
Second.
They wanted a second location.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know that,
They said they either wanted it to be expanded or to have a second
Yes,
one.
yes.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes.
they said if you can double our size over here, we'd love that.
can't
But
do
that's
it.
impossible, but you can do it. You demolish it and you build it up higher.
I was going to say, can they not build a second story on what's existing?
They could probably get a structural engineer in there to tell them how to beef it up steel wise and take it
We've
up
had a
higher.
lot of that, if you didn't have it in the
Original.
in the foundation, you can't do that.
It's so much less expensive.
They'd have to shut it
To put
down.
it someplace else.
Yeah.
Well, then you don't have the
And that's just like a
disruption.
parking garage, you can figure 20 grand per spot. It sounds great, but when you start putting numbers to it, you're gonna choke.
Oklahoma City did it to freeze up land so that we can do those bold projects. We can't just, every
I
time
know, but
something
a lot
say,
of
oh, it's
people
expensive.
But it's,
It is expensive.
But that's why the municipality should build it.
It's a long-term improvement, it's an infrastructure.
Yes.
Would it be helpful for us to go through and kind of what the estimated cost? I mean, some of these are just hard to get your arms around,
Yeah, I don't-
transportation, and then, there's so many unknowns.
Transportation's
with-
so hard because we have contributions from the feds and the state, and so I was talking to Victoria Caldwell, and I said, it's $10 million or something like that. It's what my understanding of the Covell improvement was. She goes, it's 40 million. Well, that's 40 million hard dollars, but it's
That was
10 to
our cost,
us
yeah.
after all the funny money. So it's really difficult on transportation because I struggle with that.
It can also
More like
be as
20.
high as
20 total?
An 80-20 match, if you have to do engineering, environmental, and right-of-way, acquisition of right-of-way, it's more like a 50-50 match. I mean, Steve can correct me if I'm wrong.
We find that when we get all said and done, the 80-20 gets closer to 50-50 when you get the design, because that's a commitment we have to make is for design, and then the right-of-way acquisition as part of that, and utility relocation.
That was right.
Which is unbelievable what it costs to relocate.
And on Covell, you've got how many high-pressure gas lines out there in Covell?
They're all-
Yeah, so that's a big deal.
But I do think that'd be worth looking at a study to see, are there some key railroad problems? I know that they're throughout the city, but there's some key ones where you could make an investment again that would really free up the feeling of not having as many transportation issues in them. Because, whenever you're on Danforth, the issue is 90% of the time the trains, even though.
Well, I remember that at one
It's
point in
happening,
time,
what,
the gentleman that owns Advotech, or did own Advotech, had an engineer or an architect actually draw up some plans for 33rd and for 15th.
Yeah.
But the thing he neglected to put in it was the right-of-way acquisition, which we figured at that time was, 4 times what it was going to cost? About 4 times what it was going to cost to actually build it,
Yeah.
was the right-of-way. Because you got Office Depot sitting there.
Sure.
You've got all those restaurants and then all that land there that Randy Allen owns on the south side of 33rd. Now, he's not going to give that away.
Right.
That stuff costs money.
But whenever you're talking to people that are moving from Edmond to Oklahoma City, one of the biggest things they talk
Railroads.
about are the traffic issues, and usually it's related to trying to go down Kelly and getting stopped and.
Maybe we could declare the trains a public nuisance.
Say no more.
See, I think Danforth by north is terrible. You've got you've got the two on either side, but, the high school traffic by itself is bad, and then when it runs into a train, it's
There's
terrible.
room to do it at Danforth.
Which is, it's crazy to think that Danforth could be an option given Covell, but it's a horrendous issue.
Anyone you do improves the rest of them.
There's a train at 3:25, right when school gets out, at 1 in the morning, right?
Well, it went from what, 30 trains a day to how many?
It's still 30 trains today.
Well, at one point in time, wasn't it lower than that, or was it higher?
Well, I think we still don't have a clear answer as to why they were stopping for so long, for such a period of time. I think there was probably work being done someplace in the system, and they were diverting trains here, and because it was out of schedule, it was causing trains to have to stop someplace where they had double track. And again, we occasionally still are noticing some problems popping up every once in a while.
Yeah. But I think it's going to be difficult to get those dollar amounts around here. Probably whatever dollar amount we come up with, makes whatever those top priorities.
We
bigger.
I know, I'm
can
no good at
adjust
making
though, but it
estimates
gives
like
us an
that, so I'm
idea,
not-
yeah. And I thought
We don't
what we
need
had
it.
said, because we don't have enough money to do all the roads. I mean, we could take 20 years at 5% and we'd never do it.
You're
But I
right,
thought
you
we
can
were
put
going to
it-
say, okay, this is the amount we,
Yes.
you know,
Mhm.
want to
That's
spend.
what we said.
Yeah, I think
You're
so.
right.
I think,
So,
Is there a receptivity to 1% from half a cent?
I think it would be helpful if we're going to go back and assign values to also show totals out to the side and be able to see, okay, 5 years at a half and 5 years at
Right.
one and
Okay.
five, and I know we've talked about those numbers, but, kind of a 2 or 3 columns showing, we've ranked them now, we assign the values, and out to the side, we can see, well, we can get down to number 10 if we do 1% or 1 cent for, this amount, or just kind of visually see if someone's doing all that work.
Yeah,
Mark
he's
kind
got
of did that last time.
Right.
I think he's fab at it.
Yeah, it's not familiar.
Yes.
It's a great idea.
It was a great.
Well, let's do it.
Is there a
But you gotta use these new rankings, though.
Is it on the Dropbox? Yes.
okay.
We've got to re-rank them according to this now.
Yeah, and we have to put real numbers on them, because I just kind of took a stab.
That was just your opinion of ranking.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll tell you something about Mark, he's usually pretty good at.
He's probably got the order pretty
Figuring out what
close.
something's gonna cost. He's usually pretty good at it.
Half to 1% is not difficult for your spreadsheet.
Yeah, no, I can do that. I'd be glad to.
So if this
I know you
time,
the spreadsheet.
if Mark said that a parking garage would cost $20,000,
To you.
a parking space, we're talking about $8 million
For a parking garage.
and 400 parking. 400
And that's a
parking
year.
spaces.
That's a year and a half %, 8 million. So there goes
that's
1
a-
year.
It's 1 year at 0.5%.
That's 1 year, 0.5%. And that's if we don't use any bonding capacity.
1 year at 0.5%.
That's right. Remember, Norman
Right.
is using their cash flow to service their debt. on
And
their
that might be
bonds.
cheaper with the decrease in construction if there's,
Yeah.
but that was the last quote we got from the, I
And
think,
the city
Plainview
owns
and
some of the
Manhattan.
land. The city owns some of the land, not all the land. It could go on, so.
So,
And then what, the Performing Arts Center was $200 a foot is what they were?
But they didn't.
No, they said 60, but the actual
60.
realistic.
Realistically.
That's what the musician told you, $60.
And I got some hard numbers from an architect that gave us some historical pricing data on 8 other facilities done in the past 10
Okay.
years. And so the numbers really aren't that crazy.
How much is it?
How much per?
They were ranging from, and I can't remember off the top of my head.
175 low, I think, and 275 maybe high.
That sounds about right.
Square foot.
Yeah. I would have guessed
That seems
250.
reasonable.
I'd say you're talking about $300 a square foot.
This was finished. I mean, this was the structure, finishes, everything. And now these were 5 to 10 years ago. So you adjust for inflation.
Factor is,
Yeah.
It goes up. I agree. I know.
I mean,
They're
it
talking-
fluctuates based
Plus, it's easier to
on.
multiply.
20,000 square foot building.
Yeah, so 300 is safe. 300 is a safe number, I think.
Oh, my God.
So that's 36 million?
Do it on a different
If
calculator.
you do a 120,000 square foot building.
All right, it's 40,000, right?
No, that's the footprint.
That's the footprint.
Oh, I thought the footprint was 40,000.
Yeah.
Right.
I was saying 120,000.
Yeah,
Right.
well, you said
You're right.
right.
You're both right.
Okay.
40 footprint, 120
So-
square foot.
Yeah, times,
300.
36 million.
Yeah.
Divided in half.
Yeah, so 18 million, so that's
Why am I
a
dividing?
little over a year, 1%.
Yeah,
Why am I
that's a
dividing
little
it?
over a
To make
year.
the number smaller.
the university taking the other half.
No, we're not divided then, because
Yeah.
that's not dependable. I mean, I.
Right.
I'm not throwing rocks, I'm just saying,
Yeah, you
It's not
can't.
you
realistic.
can't count on it. You,
It might even be less because
But you know what, though, the
private
square footage includes all the classrooms. And so it might be reasonable to say, look, we're gonna participate in the Performing Arts Center, which is only
We're not building classrooms.
60,000 or whatever. You know, if you want to put 50 classrooms in there, that's a different number.
You know, what Mark and I showed both was at 10 years at 0.5%, after 5 years, you've got $32 million a year in capital improvement funds available between the 3/4 and the half.
But we don't get to touch the 3/4.
It's not committed, it's budgeted.
But we're not, are we? Are we given that purview?
All we're
some of it
asking
burns
for
off on
is
bonds.
a list of projects.
Talking about the 2000 CIP?
Yeah.
That's
and
paying back
our
bond.
feeling on funding options.
And
You know, we can give 2 options to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can do that.
But I think we're trying to figure out how big to go, and so then we're getting real specific, even though we may not be that specific in our recommendation to.
Well, we could do,
Well-
like he said, we could give them 2 recommendations. We can do, one go big or
Go big.
be conservative
Yeah, well, and Ann had a good
We can
point.
list what we think are pros and cons,
of each one.
and whether, you know, if we're representing the population, do we feel the population would really support it?
Well, I got to say that from the first time we walked in here, I felt that there were several people in here that, and just from my opinion, from the way they talked, that didn't support renewing it. And now we're talking about extending it to 1 cent for 15 years. I think we've come a little ways. Don't you?
It's scary. And
Did you get the same feeling?
I mean, I was kind of
with you, yeah.
one of those
And
people.
I think we really ought to appreciate the way we felt when we came in here. Because if we walk out of here wild-eyed and say 1% for 15 years and we're going to build a performing arts deal, we're not going to impress a lot of people.
No, we're not.
So we have to let people know what's available, how we're going to get there, and
Well-
what saying no entails.
And the way Ann did the boathouse, I mean, you know, that, a lot of times, that's kind of the way to do it on like a performing arts. We're going to commit 15 million, and either you build a 50,000 square foot facility, or you kick in the
Right.
rest university.
I agree 100%.
And you just have to, I mean, that's the
I
amount.
think that makes sense.
That's how much you got.
Yeah.
Yes,
The
Pete.
thing we need to do to jumpstart on estimates and things like this, because it's like the Cobell project right now, they come out, and they put bids out earlier this year, and the bids come in $8 million higher than what they thought it would 2 years ago. Because the prices are going up on material and labor and everything else, so.
Well, back when they were doing the Olympics in China, you couldn't buy plywood. You couldn't buy it.
Well, we'll get to work on trying to get some dollar amounts just as a starting point and utilizing what we have already from Mark and Bob and the list that Dave put together, and just try to create something that's kind of drilled down and simplified to see. Because it is interesting how, I mean, just personally, how far I've come, and just to see the group have a collective vision for Evan, although there are slightly different flavors maybe to that. But there seems to be a desire to want to invest further in our city and using capital improvements.
And it'll be up to the city council to say, you know, this is our big vision, but this is how we're going to be able to implement it. Because you can't do this many projects with this much money without having changes. As the city of Oklahoma City showed us, you know, between the ballpark that didn't have seats and, you know, trying to figure out where the convention center is going to land. You know, it's never simple. So it's going to have to be
4 years
flexible.
for a health and wellness center.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, it seems to me, and maybe I'm over reading these things, but it seems like our top 5 or 6 priorities are getting pretty consistent between some of the different lists that we've got too. So that may simplify what we do.
It'll be good to see how far we get down once we sign the numbers.
Yeah.
I think on the transportation road, you just need to assign a percentage. You're not, you could do 2 cents for 20 years and not do it all.
Well, and I think, you know, the trails and park systems are equally, they complement these other big things.
Yeah.
And so, even though I think that was talked about quite a bit, and I didn't put it in my top, I think it's something that's needed. And I love how Norman carved out percentage for those types of things. So. Okay.
Joe, I have a question about the next meeting. I just got back in town and I was looking at my mail, and there's, I think, is the 17th when there's something that they're doing a dinner? Is that the 17th?
Yes.
26, I thought.
See,
Okay.
29.
29.
Okay, I just was glancing through
It's,
it.
you're
Okay,
talking about the boards and commissions?
yeah, okay.
It's also a Tuesday night.
Okay, I just don't want to miss food, so.
Used to be a fish fry.
Okay, so does the 17th work still? And then Cody mentioned that there was some conflicts that he had in October. So
We've all got conflicts.
I know, so, yeah.
Well, the October
Unless
meeting,
there's
first
anything.
October meeting is on the 1st. I may be late.
Okay.
And the 15th, No, Public Safety Center dedication is on the 29th of October.
Okay. Well,
We don't have a
contact us.
meeting that day.
We'll be done. We will have it all figured out by that point. We will go to Patriarch, my treat. and We will celebrate. Yes.
You know that's on film,
I'm
right?
serious. Yes. I don't know, is that okay?
Shall everybody come to the football game? It's play
Yeah,
four
so
days.
White Owl want one. So if that's not in compliance with any
Yeah.
city rules,
See you
then
all.
we will do
Jill, I'll
that.
see you.
But
I don't know, we missed the date. What
We were talking
big
about.
party?
So post-dedication ceremony with the Public Safety Center, if we're done with all this, we will have a little celebration over at the Patriarch. So,
Sounds great.
anything else that we need to talk about? Other than, the plan is we'll put this information together, simplify it, get some dollar amounts assigned. Dina, you look
Is
like
there any- like you indicated, is there any way we can get some numbers together on some of these items?
Yes, so that's what we're gonna try to do, is get some dollar amounts, yes, so that's what, and we'll put what the assumptions are, but I'll take a stab at it, and then we can throw darts at it, so at least get us somewhere. Yeah, we'll just do that next time. Anything else that we need to discuss? Thank you for your time, and go out to the stadium and break the records. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.